the symmetry on like we talked about doing in class here. I'm going to use object X, which is the X-axis for the object. First thing I'll do is grab the face, and one thing I noticed right away, my lines here are a little crooked. So if I grab one vertex, I can kind of get that a little more parallel. So now I'll grab one of the faces here and extrude it. So extrude is Command E, and I'll just bring it back as far back as I see it going. Now I'm done extruding at this point. What I want to do now is actually hit the E key and rotate that face. Okay, and I'm going to move it just a little bit closer. Okay, now I'm going to, while that face is still selected, I'm going to do Command E so I can extrude again, and that will bring me up here, and hit the E key and rotate that so it's facing one another. And then I can hit Command E one more time and extrude those faces right together. Okay. And what I could do is kind of leave them right about here. See the width of the spinous process below me? And go into my perspective window and select face and delete and select. So now I've deleted both. Now I'm not sure this is going to work in symmetry. I may have to switch to turning it off, but I'm going to grab the four edges on that hole, so because it's symmetrical or symmetry's on, it's doing the pair there, and then bridge it, and there you go. So now eventually that part of that can be used for my spinous process. Alright, so now I've got my arch. Now if I, it's kind of hard I know for y'all to see, but if I change this to wireframe, you can get an idea of how much of this I need. And if I just say Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop, I can actually get an edge loop. So I've created an edge from the bottom to the top, if you will, of that. And then if we look at that in your perspective window, got this upside down, you can see the what's happened here. And this is where in class hit the Q key and delete the faces. So I now have oops, I didn't mean to do that. Well, I think I deleted too many faces. Oh, okay, so what happened was I did the insert edge loop, but it only did it on the outside, right? It didn't do it on the inside here. See how there's just one solid face. So I'm going to do the same thing. Go back to object mode, mesh tools, insert edge loop. Now if I was cool, I could look in the side window, see where the three dots are moving up and down? And I can see, so I'm lined up. Now when I go and I can delete the face on the inside and leave a wall for the lamina, the pedicle there. I always get confused which is the lamina and which is the pedicle. I know the whole thing is the arch, but I think that's actually the pedicle. and the lamina's out here. All right, now I can decide, what to do. I think what I'll do first is close this hole. So what I'm going to do is use a tool called Mesh Tools called Append to Polygon. So I really can't use the bridge tool here. And when I see that pink face, I can hit return, and it will then close up that space for me. Again, append to polygon, click. I get this purple sets of arrows going around this thing that indicates to me the software knows what to do. It shows me a preliminary, and I hit return, and now it's entered that. And then I have one more. Letter G means append to polygon again. And I'm going to go over here. So now I have the base. So we've got the same thing that we had before. The nice thing about Danielle's suggestion is we now have, we haven't had to do a mirror cut or duplicate special. The only problem I did notice is it didn't mirror the append to polygon. It didn't, with the symmetry on, it still didn't do that. So I still need to append to polygon. Oops, obviously did the wrong thing there. So let's see if I can get the right one here. And then the last set. So this would be, so far, this is the only disadvantage I can see to this method, in the sense that the append to polygon using the other method, meaning the mirror and duplicate special, it would have done both sides simultaneously, like you saw this morning in class. So that's kind of the start. And then again, we have the same, we have the real advantage that we talked about. Since we haven't had to do those other steps, we can now extrude and bring out our transverse processes. So I can see over here. Let's put the shading on. And it looks like this goes up a little bit. I think it actually, what happens is it gets just a little wider. Now see, I want to scale in only one direction. There we go. Finally, let me do it. Okay. And here I might want to do an edge loop. So again, I can scale that, and oops. I want to scale that edge loop now. So I can kind of get, I know what's wrong. My scale tool is set on. Let's see if we can set on component. There you go. So in that case, I did really want to do the middle. But you see, I can start to get that kind of more bulbous shape that you see in the bone. All right. So we can keep working on this. It works really well. Like I said, the only thing I found was a shortcoming was I can't get the append to polygon to work on both. So that was one minor setback. But I think given the time it saves, it's certainly worth working with. So I'm just trying to close up a little bit the size of that face. I'm going to say Command E for extrude and use the side view here to bring the bottom of the inferior articulating, oops, and then maybe move it forward a little bit. So I think you get the idea. We just keep working around this and using these tools to get what we want. Eventually we'll have to add more edges. One trick I know that I would like to do is, it's going to seem kind of trivial, but I don't want this big space for this gosh darn it. It's really tricky, this thing, because see, again, I really can't use the multi-cut tool with the symmetry on, so I turn it off. So I want to see that little point. So now I've made, a nice four-sided plane there, but I created a triangle here. And what I'm going to find, and what you're going to find, I think, is that you want this like this, and then you're going to come and just literally make one, hold the shift key down, come straight down, and do the same thing on the other side. See, I had to turn the symmetry off, right? So it's not telling me, okay, I got your object. That's when I get the big square. Hold the shift key to come down. And got that object. All right, so now I've got lines both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, turn my symmetry back on, grab these two edges. And the reason we're doing this again is because I need more faces for this to work. And when I added this cross line, I made triangles, right? So now what I've done, I'm going to change the move to component. So it moves perpendicular to the face there. See, as I drag that out, now I'm getting a little rounder shape. And I can turn my symmetry off, grab these faces, and scale them a little narrower, and again move them a little forward. And now I've got a little bit more of that rounded shape I want. Okay, in the back here, inside this canal, there's a couple of things I could try. I could put another set of faces. I think what I would do instead is grab these two walls and scale that, and then move that them anteriorly a little bit. And we'll have to do the same thing here. Take the, at least on the inside, I'm going to take these two faces, scale them wider, and move them back in space a little bit. So I have a little bit better hole. And I don't like, see, I'm not sure that's going to work because I really don't like how, maybe what I can do is make another edge right across here. So let's go to the top. So what I don't care for is this shape. I want that to be a little rounder, right? So I'm going to take, symmetry's off. I'm going to take the multi-cut tool, and I'm just going to hold the shift key and drag it across. And it didn't do anything. Let me see if I can get this. Get the object selected. And now maybe I can drag that. Like that. And then if I grab this edge loop, so I double click it so I have the edge loop, I can move it. Okay. I turn the symmetry back on. That's the hardest part about this method, is just remembering the term, which is not, you know. Remember, double click gives me the whole edge loop, and you can always double check by seeing what's going on. I'm going to rotate this edge loop a little bit so it gives me a little more of a perpendicular. And you can see now I've got kind of a rounder canal there. And I guess really the last thing we have to do, although obviously there's a lot of subtle modification, is it's like I made this go down. I didn't mean to do that. We want to do, according to my side view here, is pull up superior articulating surface. And just by dumb luck, I should have checked this before. You notice the multi-cut tool edge I added kind of gives me a nice base. So it allows me to maintain that pedicle and at the same time create my superior. So I extruded that up and then I hit rotate, so I'm not continuing any extrusion, I'm just rotating that one face. And now I've got a decent shape. Now it's a little odd, you know, I don't think this is the exact shape of that, or a good shape necessarily for the superior, so I might just modify, work with that a little bit. Now in this case I'm going to go back and change this to world, my move tool, so I can move that edge down a little bit, and I'm just going to grab this vertex and move it posterior a little bit, and move it up a little bit, so that's a little more. Okay. I did it backwards. Gosh darn it. Sorry, I put it in the wrong direction. I just noticed looking at my drawing. Okay. Let me double check here by, yeah, so it should be articulating back there. And let's take this edge, rotate it, and then move it down. So that becomes the edge behind me. I'm going to rotate it back just a little bit because it's cutting in a little more. Okay. Now the other point I want to do is I don't like this shape right here, so I'm going to take this vertex and just move it anterior a little bit and move this one. So really this symmetry thing is nice because it's doing everything on both sides, and I don't have to worry about recombining it when I'm done. I don't have to deal with the fact that maybe some of the vertices aren't close enough to combine. This shape I'm not big on right now, so I'm going to move it a little bit that way. Same thing with this. I think that's starting to get a little more like, you know, the shape we see here. So I just want to be careful that, again, this is why I model in the actual geometry mode, so I can see how badly these changes are making the effect on the model. Sometimes you model in the preview mode and then you go to the other viewpoint and it's like, oh my goodness, that's way different than I thought it was. So I'm just really trying to get this inferior articulating surface a little more, a little thinner, so it's a little more natural. So it kind of gives me a feel like that. Okay, and then we'll work on those further. But I think that gives you a good idea of how this suggestion from Danielle really helped things. And last step you might do, or at least one of the steps you have to do, is really, I don't want this to look like a marshmallow, right? It needs a little more structure. So this is where I would take the edge loop and create an edge loop to kind of give me a lip at the top, a lip at the bottom, and maybe in the middle of the vertebra. The body, not the whole vertebra, but just the body. I can modify that a little bit. You got to be careful. Sometimes when you insert edge loop, it doesn't understand and actually makes edge loop perpendicular to what you want. So now what I could do, see if I go 3, now I'm closer to what I want as far as that body shape. What I can also do then is go back and let's say I can grab, it's got that one edge, so if I hold down the shift key, double click the other edge and scale those edges, I can start getting a little bit that shape that you saw in my drawing. And I can actually make this one just a little bit bigger. Maybe do the same thing here. So I get a little more of that shape. Now my bone that I used was a real bone. And I think it's gotten worn down a little bit. So I'm not going to go too crazy. But again, if I wanted to emphasize how the body tends to be a little, I can just do a number like, oops, sorry, I missed one. Let me turn off this grid here because it's hiding things on me. So I can center the pivot and just bring this in a little bit so I get a little more of that shape that we saw. Okay, so that's pretty close to, I mean, that should give you a good start. Oh, the spinous process, I'm sorry, I forgot. I would just, this point, I don't need the symmetry, so I turn it off. Grab this edge, move it down, maybe take these 2 edges, and since I have symmetry off, I can scale them apart. Otherwise, with symmetry on, I would just move one to the side. Then I can take that face and Command E, extrude it, and move it down. So how far down it's got to go, I can see by virtue of my sketch here. Make it a little bigger so you can see what I'm doing better. Now you can see right away where this shape is really stretching. This face is just being butchered, right? So go back to 1 and work with inserting some edge loops. Or not. Come on, man. So we'd insert an edge loop there. Let's undo that for a second. And here it might be a place where you really prefer using the multi-cut tool because it's going to give you, you can control a little bit more how the angle of that edge. So if I want to bring this face or this edge down more, maybe bring the one and then maybe take this one and scale it a little smaller and scale the end face here. Maybe do the same thing with this edge loop, just scale it so that this top plane's a little narrower. So there we got kind of a decent start, and then you can continue to play with what to do with those. Maybe this one really should go taller. And again, this should go to component and go taller. Interesting. Got to figure out which one of these guys is the right one. Okay. Now the other thing you may find when you're doing the edge, the dorsal spinous process, especially when you're going to modify it later with some of the other, sometimes instead of stretching it, you actually have to grab the faces. So I'm going to use this lasso that will let me grab the faces a little easier than making a box. And let's go just to this one here. And then put on the soft select. So I'm hitting the letter B, and I'm holding down with the soft select button depressed. I'm moving the middle mouse, and I'm sorry, the left mouse, and I'm just adding. See that circle? It's getting bigger, and you notice how now some of the edges are going red to orange to yellow to black. I'm trying to get to just about where that process meets there, and then I can rotate it a little bit and move the whole thing down, and it just will give you a little more natural feel. Okay, or in this case, looks like I moved it down. I moved it too far, and you can then go, adjust in here better than I did. How do I get this to match my drawing a little better? Okay, but that's basically the premise. So that's the way Danielle suggested we look at that symmetry tool. It certainly seemed to be a good tool or a big help. And so please experiment with it, see what you can find out. Okay.